Hey everyone, we're going to be looking at the eclipse. I shot this myself. I'm pretty proud of this footage that I am showing you right now. Also, content warning, we're going to be talking about transphobia and homophobia for the most part, as well as a little bit of misogyny, of course, because those two are very interconnected. So yeah, this is going to be a heavy one. But yeah, I'm just going to show you my footage that I took, and I'm not gonna put any visuals in front of it, and I'm just gonna keep talking about what to do when your friend comes out to you. Hey there, tell me if you've ever been in this situation where you're hanging out with your friend and all of a sudden your friend had something important to tell you. To you, they are coming out as transgender, or maybe they're coming out as gay, bi, lesbian, pansexual. They might be coming out as a whole variety of things, even like asexual or aromantic, non-binary, gender non-conforming, gender flexible. It doesn't have to be all of these things. It can be any of these things. And of course, they might even have pronouns that they identify as, which in your perspective may feel overwhelming at first, but there's a few things to consider, especially when it comes to learning people's names and learning people's pronouns, and learning people's gender identity, and learning people's sexual orientation. All of these are very, very, very important because they inform you as to what kind of person your friend or family is. The first thing that you need to know is that your friend felt comfortable enough to trust you with this knowledge, that now you know this, that perhaps you have developed a friendship that is deep enough for them to feel comfortable admitting to you who they truly are. If this is the case, you need to treasure that, a lot, because that means you have a friend who really does trust you. You did something right, enough for them to trust you. Speaking for myself as a trans person, I don't confide to literally everyone that I'm transgender, because not everyone needs to be told that I'm transgender. When I'm at the grocery store, I don't tell everyone at the cash register that I'm transgender. I don't need to. My interaction with people on a day-to-day basis is explicitly just the way it normally has been. I go to the store, I pay for my food, and I eat the food. That's basically it. But say you're a trans person and you're friends with somebody. Friends enough to have already spent time together to be friends. So coming out as trans, that's like a true litmus test in a way, because you have to kind of then test the vibe to see how comfortable you are telling this person, hey, I am transgender, and these are my pronouns. This is how I identify myself. Can you please use these pronouns when referencing me? Trans people can't do that with everybody, no matter what, and especially with homophobes. Especially with homophobes who are of a certain role in society and the community. So for example, in laws where teachers have to notify parents if their child is LGBT in any way, you can't tell teachers now. They're legally obligated to report as to whether or not their student is trans. So that's really important to recognize as well, because that can also be a barrier with parents as well. I think for parents listening, you need to kind of find it in your soul to ask yourself the question, how do I really feel about my child being LGBT? This is not something that you can decide on. This is something that you need to be asking yourself before you even have a kid, right? Because what if your kid is LGBT? There's no such thing as social contagion. That's been debunked by the American Academy of Pediatrics. It's not something that happens. You're born to be gay. You're born to be trans. You're born to be all these things if that is the circumstance. That's not something you can change or stop or prevent. Like, conversion therapy doesn't fucking work. It just doesn't work. There are some people who do need to, like, sit down and honestly look in the mirror and say, hey, listen, I really should not be having kids, like, at all. And I think it is people who cannot accept that their kid might be LGBT in some way. Children need support so that way they can grow up to be successful, to be thriving, autonomous human beings, to live thriving futures. And that's ultimately your role here. Like, that's not debatable. That's your role. If you can't uphold that standard, then you don't deserve to be a parent. I'm not going to debate you on this one. If you cannot accept that your kid, if he is LGBT, that is a circumstance since birth. Is this an argument pro-abortion? Of course it is. People need access to abortion. Unconditionally so. People need access to abortion so that way people don't have babies under the age of 18 or really under the age of fucking 30 at this point. That shouldn't be up for discussion. Like, straight up. That should not be something that we are still fighting about today. It should be something that we should fight for, access to abortion. I only wish that we were just past that point. Anyway, let's get back on topic, because all of those things are worth advocating for, but when it comes to somebody coming out to you as an LGBT person in some way, you need to be supportive of them. And there are some do's and don'ts within being supportive for LGBT friends and families and relatives and community members. So let's get this off the bat right away. Definitely do ask about pronouns. What do they want to be referred to as? Of course, do make sure that you are learning their gender identity, what their gender identity means to them personally. Also, don't expect people to automatically keep the gender identity that they have decided on, especially if they're a trans kid. They might be learning their gender identity more so as they grow. I know plenty of trans adults in particular who are still learning their gender identity as life progresses. To be honest, I'm pretty comfortable with my gender identity, also comfortable with my pronouns, but definitely have that conversation with them. That's important. Now, I also want to talk about something else that is important, and that is, who are you going to say their name and pronoun to in front of, certain individuals, right? Because let's say, for example, they tell you and you two are like best friends, but like their parents are like overly religious and very homophobic and watches a lot of MAGA style TV like Fox News and OANN or whatever, that type of shit. So what do you do then? My recommendation is, first and foremost, always check in with your friend and see what your friend has to say. If your friend says, okay, maybe we're going to test the waters a little bit, we're going to try to see how my mother reacts to these pronouns, that would be a good first step. But make sure that your friend is comfortable doing that, as well as yourself, before you attempt something like that. More specifically, listen to your friend. If your friend says, do not at all whatsoever mention my pronouns or my chosen name in front of my parents, they are never going to accept me, my dad has a gun, or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, you do not ever cross that boundary. If you cross that boundary, that is not just a dick move, but that can get your friend killed. No joke. Don't take that lightly at all. The same thing goes for like all of your friends, right, that you have that are mutuals, maybe their friends exclusively or your friends. Try to have an ear out for people who might react negatively in a homophobic or transphobic way. Say, for example, you have this guy named Rudolph, right? And Rudolph is extremely homophobic. he likes to watch Dave Rubin, and Dave Rubin has routinely affirmed all of his homophobia. And your friend, who you're mutuals with this guy with, just came out to you as gay. Probably not a good idea to give this guy any hints whatsoever that your friend is gay. Now, what if, say, for example, one day you three are hanging out, it was a pre-planned and arranged get-together, and you're just chatting it up, having a bunch of beers, and all of a sudden, Rudolph makes a really homophobic joke. I mean, it's really messed up. It's almost just like by the books, just very hateful shit. And you see your friend who is sitting there and very, very visibly uncomfortable. What do you do? Well, again, I would say assess the safety of that. I would say ask yourself a few questions. One, are you safe in terms of this person being armed in any way? Can this person hurt you? Where are you exactly? Are you at this guy's house, or did you invite him over? Right? These are questions that you need to ask, not only for your safety, but also how much control of the situation do you really have? At the end of the day, you should have a spine. You should be able to stand up for your friend, tell your friend who just, made that really homophobic joke that he's not allowed to do that. He shouldn't have any right to be able to say that at all. He should not feel emboldened or safe to make hateful comments like that, right? Like, especially in front of your friend. You should not be able to do that. So, definitely speak out. Have a voice. Have a spine. If your friend is not able to stick up for themselves, you should be the one to do that, if it is safe to do so. Definitely assess the situation and ask yourself those key questions. Ask your friend how they want to be presented in public. Say you go to the mall every so often, you go to record stores every so often. Say you usually walk to the liquor store on the corner to pick up a soda with your friend, and those are the times that you interact in public with your friend, right? So your friend may have different feelings about different places. So for example, if you're going to the club and your friend is already all dolled up with the makeup and just wearing the best clothes that they have ever worn in their lives, of course, just like that means that they are definitely comfortable going to the club and dancing in front of their contemporaries. Now, your friend may or may not feel comfortable at that level everywhere else. Your friend might be comfortable wearing glamour and beauty at the liquor store or the grocery store or the weed dispensary or the farmer's market or the church or anywhere else. They might feel comfortable being their unapologetic self. You want to encourage that if that is what they're choosing to do. And you should always encourage that. Push that. Be there for their every step out of their shell, but never force them out of their shell. If they don't feel comfortable in one situation, that might not be the case everywhere else. That might be the case in some situations. Some people don't choose to do HRT. Some people can't do HRT for health reasons or for legal reasons. Some people don't change their name. Some people don't change their pronouns. Some people live differently than other trans and non-binary, gender non-conforming people. I mean, that's the whole point of gender non-conforming, right? There are cis women, for example, who are named Bobby. There are cisgender men who are named Leslie. So why can't a trans woman also go by Bobby? And why can't a trans man also go by Leslie? Again, this is important because if you're going to support your friend who is coming out for the first time to you, they might break some expectations that you have of them. And that's the point too, is that you can't have expectations of your friend specifically. Your friend needs to communicate with you, But your friend might not always feel comfortable communicating with you. Your friend might tell somebody else more about their gender identity than they tell you. That's okay. Don't feel jealous. That's not something to be ashamed of either. It is just simply how some people survive when they are vibe checking everybody. Like, think about it this way. Say your friend comes out to you. Hey, I'm trans. I use he, him pronouns. Okay, cool. So you're a trans man. This is how you are trans. Okay, cool. The typical way that somebody would respond when somebody learns that somebody is trans for the first time. Now, on the other hand, what if, say, for example, somebody comes out to somebody else? They say, oh, okay, well, I'm non-binary. I identify with they, them pronouns. And maybe that person understands more about non-binary people than you. Don't feel like you've been betrayed. Maybe they're not ready to tell you that they're non-binary. Maybe it's one step at a time with you. It's not personal. It's just them trying to survive. Because they don't know who's going to lash out at them next. But that's the point too, right? It's that we're talking about like expectations for trans people. And of course, like, I expect trans people to be able to communicate, but trans people aren't really always going to be communicating. It depends on our relationships with everyone else. Remember, like I said, I don't always tell people that I'm trans, right? Like, think about the grocery store. Well, what if, say, for example, I see a cashier every 3 times I go to the store on average, and me and that particular cashier chat it up every so often. Well, at some point, they are going to learn that I'm trans. And so I'll be like, okay, my pronouns are she, her. But y'all online know that I don't just use she, her pronouns. I use all kinds of pronouns. I use she, they, they. Those are the 3 pronouns that I normally use. You might be listening to this and thinking that, wow, coming out sounds like a lot of work. Well, it is a lot of work, right? It really is at the end of the day. Most people think that coming out as LGBT in some way is about coming out in this one big, singular, fantastical, celebratory event. I mean, if your community is cool enough, yeah, coming out as LGBT in some way can be really, really awesome, especially if you try to do it in that big, noisy, celebratory way. I'm not dissing that, by the way. If you could do that, I mean, fuck yeah. But at the same time, we gotta remember that it's not just a big, singular event, right? If anything, it's more of a process, right? Because if we're talking about coming out, if we're talking about a whole discovering process where one discovers that they are LGBT in some way. And then once they've discovered that aspect of themselves, they have to then think about who they can tell, who is safe to tell. And once you do that, and you narrow down those people, you might be coming out to several people over the course of time, in fact. So if you're coming out to several people, it can take months, possibly years. And so even if you did do it in a big celebratory way, that would still put you at risk of certain people whom you would not want to find out having found out, like homophobic, transphobic parents and whatnot. So if your friend comes out to you as any part of the LGBT community, you need to be there for them. Not just in that moment, but moving forward. Also, another piece of advice, get educated on all different aspects of being LGBT. LGBT history, the LGBT community as it is active right now, overall looking into queer and trans history and queer and trans culture. Learn about STAR and revolutionary trans organizations. Look up the history of the Institute of Sexology. Look up Magnum Hirschfeld. Look up Audre Lorde. Look up Marsha P. Johnson. Look up Sylvia Rivera. Look up Emma Goldman. Look up Kathleen Hanna and Bikini Kill. Learn about these things. You don't necessarily need to read all of it. You don't need to do this for some kind of homework assignment or whatever. I'm just saying this is out there if you want to learn more. But more importantly, especially if you want to be supportive of your friend, look for resources. Look for organizations that can point to other helpful resources in the area. Look for medical centers, clinics, places that have support groups. These places in particular always have information that can teach you more than this video, in fact. Look up organizations that have websites in particular, because those are always chock full of information. One thing I want to warn you about are businesses that wave rainbow apparel in particular, especially during the month of June. It can be cool to see those in the community and it should be encouraged. But the thing is that if those businesses are only doing that during the month of June, then they may be doing it to try to bring in new customers in particular. And they might not be participating in anything productive towards queer and trans liberation. That's something that you gotta keep an eye out for, because some of these corporations and companies and businesses actually use their money against the LGBT community, such as Disney and Dennis Baxley. And don't even get me started on, say, J.K. Rowling or Chick-fil-A. Another thing, too, is to get involved with anti-fascism in particular, because a lot of these overall transphobic AstroTurf groups are often linked with other far-right fascist groups. For example, Sanja Shah, who is the head of the school board of Chino Valley Unified School District, she in particular has been seen hanging out with Proud Boys and shit. That shit is really fucking whack. And it in large part explains why a lot of anti-LGBT action in the Southern California region are so violent, especially in North Hollywood and Glendale and Orange County. All those places are particularly violent whenever anti-LGBT groups tend to assemble. And this is why, because they are astroturfed and they are organizing alongside with far-right and neo-Nazi fascist groups. Being informed on these things is one thing, but also being an ally and an accomplice is a whole other thing entirely. That is the huge concern with some of these businesses, right? Is that some businesses that sometimes wave the rainbow apparel will also platform fascists. And that's when you need to put your foot down, call that business ahead of time, be like, hey, listen, the person that you are about to platform is going to bring harm to the community. That's something you need to vocalize and try to do that in a big way to really get them, to sway them, to not host this group of people. You may think, okay, well, I'm just one person, and even if I'm lucky, well, the chances of that are small. Well, that's part of the reason why you gotta organize that. You gotta organize so that you create a culture that is anti-homophobia, anti-transphobia, anti-fascist. That, in a way, will deplete the necessity for your friend even having to come out to you in such a cautious way. Your friend won't have to come out anymore if that is the case. Your friend can just simply exist happily. Oh, me? I'm just doing what I like to do. I'm just being me, my free self. That's the goal. You're going to be able to achieve that through networking, making what we will call a support network. Who are the friends that we can trust the most when things get bad for our friend who just came out? Who can we rely on to stand up for our friend? Who can we rely on to be there for our friend when they need to vent? A safe person, a safe space, a safe community for that person to be themselves safely, because it might not be safe for them to do so where they live or who they talk to on a regular basis. See, This is why it's important to make the community safe, to make the community a friendly place for everybody. Yourself, me, your friends, your family, your relatives, your neighbors, your acquaintances, your coworkers, your homies, everybody. Everybody should be safe. Because let's be real here, folks. None of us are free unless we're all free. One thing that I did not cover in this video is what to do if you misgender your friend by accident. Luckily for you, I actually have a completely separate video available for that topic specifically, which you'll see on screen right now. Anyway, thank you for listening. I hope this was helpful and insightful, and I wish you all a happy, good rest of your day. Peace.